we'll continue investigating the role and design of instructional materials. And in this regard, we need to know, once the instructional materials have been developed or they are there for the teacher to adopt, or the teacher has made decisions for their adaptation, but what's the criteria, how we can evaluate their use actually in the classroom? Because the success or failure of a language program much rests upon the usefulness of instructional materials, how they are prepared and how they are actually used in the classroom. So we will look at the element of monitoring the use of materials. Well, materials, the use of materials in the classroom actually, they tend to represent the plans for teaching. I mean, how the teaching is going to take place. For example, if the materials are communicative in their nature, so they will represent sort of task-based language teaching or communicative approach in the classroom. So the monitoring element can give us some information about how the program is running. Well, as I have talked about how they represent the plans for teaching, now we'll talk about, how teachers use these materials for learners. So the monitoring can help us assess how they are eventually seen by teachers for teaching purposes, right? Are the teachers, do teachers think that these materials are fit for the age of the learners, fit for their level of proficiency, and fit for their religious or cultural sensitivities? And the monitoring can also reflect how the lessons are being taught, okay, or how effective are the lessons developed or made out of these materials. What are the purposes of monitoring materials? So one of the purposes is to know the effectiveness of a language program, to what extent these materials are relevant for the needs of the learners. And then another purpose is they could give us some information about how they are working, how they are running, right? And this is how, by monitoring, we could keep a record of different stages involved in materials design, right? And they help assist teachers. The monitoring process actually help teachers how to use them. For example, if a teacher is facing problems in the use of communicative material, so the monitoring can highlight, well, this is the problem for a specific teacher, so why not to give training to the teacher, and why not to involve the teacher in some observation of some peer teachers, right? And the forms of monitoring are, in its simplest form, it could be the observation. For example, inviting one teacher to go into the classroom to go and observe the other teacher and observe how the learning is taking place. And then feedback sessions where teachers and administration can talk about the usefulness and some problems if there are any. And there could be some reviews of the textbooks. These reviews could involve some feedback from students themselves. And then lastly, the students' reviews, how actually students see these materials. So in summary, monitoring the use of materials is greatly seen important element when we design instructional materials for language programs. So the reason why we have talked about the monitoring element is that could help us become aware of different purposes of monitoring and different forms of monitoring, materials. So I do hope that you are now better, familiar with various elements of instructional materials, and you are now better placed to design materials. So you might think of, going into the classroom, observing teachers, and seeing how they are teaching and what sort of materials they are using. If they are extending the existing materials, so how they are extending them. So these are some of the key features of instructional materials.